There are purchases we make in life that never show up on a receipt. They don't come with price tags or promotional discounts. They're not found on store shelves or in shopping carts. And yet we pay for them, sometimes with peace, sometimes with time, sometimes with the very essence of who we are. These are not just transactions of money. These are transactions of the soul. The world is full of things that seem harmless, even beneficial. They shimmer with appeal. They whisper promises of happiness, acceptance, power, and pleasure. They are marketed with precision, designed to appeal to the insecurities, cravings, and longings that dwell deep within the human heart. But what if behind the gloss, behind the branding, behind the desire to own or consume, there was something darker, something ancient, something deliberate? What if some things weren't just bad decisions, but spiritual traps? There's a reason some products seem to reach into the core of our identity. They don't simply offer us something, we allow them to define us. A piece of clothing doesn't just cover us. It claims to elevate us. It claims to elevate us. A gadget doesn't merely entertain, it becomes our escape. A lifestyle brand doesn't just sell products, it sells belonging, confidence, and power. These are not mere tools, they are symbols, rituals, substitutes for something greater. But when the soul is hungry, it will eat anything. And in desperation, people reach for what is easy, not what is true. The seduction of materialism is not in what it gives, but in what it takes while pretending to give. It takes time, attention, conviction, clarity. It takes the mind away from eternal questions and buries it under temporary concerns. It takes the heart and fills it with noise so that it can no longer hear the whisper of purpose. There's a quiet danger in the things we welcome without resistance, the things we accept because everyone else does, the things we buy because they're fashionable, popular, or promoted by influencers we admire. Slowly, subtly, we build altars in our lives to things that have no power to save us, but great power to shape us. We were not made to worship possessions, yet possessions have learned how to capture our worship, not by demanding it, but by disguising it. This is the devil's tactic, not open destruction, but disguised deception. He doesn't always come as the monster in the nightmare. Sometimes he arrives in the form of a deal too good to resist. Sometimes he looks like an ad campaign that perfectly understands your desires. Sometimes he offers something that appears good, but twists what's true. The devil's goal isn't always to make you fall, it's to make you drift. And drift happens when you stop noticing what you're anchored to. In every generation, there are things that carry more spiritual weight than they appear to. They aren't evil in and of themselves, but what they represent, what they lead to, and how they control people is where the danger lies. These things become portals, openings through which compromise enters. They are objects and ideas, systems and slogans, and when unchecked, they begin to own the buyer. You thought you were just consuming it, but it was consuming you, but it was consuming. To buy into these things isn't just to make a purchase, it's to sign a contract. An agreement, often unspoken, that trades peace for pressure, purpose for popularity, conviction for convenience. The contract says, you can have this, but only if you surrender that. And most people don't realize they've signed until the damage is done, until the joy fades, until the addiction grows, until the emptiness becomes undeniable. Not everything that's available is meant to be accepted. Not everything that's offered is meant to be opened. And not everything that looks good is good. In fact, the most dangerous things often come in the most attractive packages. It's time to question what's being sold. It's time to discern what's beneath the surface. Because the devil doesn't need to attack you with horror, he only needs to sell you a lie that sounds like the truth. This is not just a warning. It's a wake-up call. Some things you buy with money, others you pay for with your soul, and the cost is far too high. It says far too high. Luxury, once a symbol of refinement, now a weapon of deception. It's not the quality of the item that's at issue. Craftsmanship is not the enemy. Beauty is not the sin. The danger begins when luxury stops being about value and becomes a means of validation. When an object is no longer just something to wear, but something to prove. When we buy not out of need, but out of fear of not being seen, not being admired, not being enough. It begins subtly. A brand becomes a dream. A logo becomes a goal. Slowly, silently, our hearts start to crave the applause that comes not from within, but from the world. We dress not for warmth, not even for taste, but for status. A symbol stitched onto a piece of fabric suddenly becomes a ladder. One we climb to reach a version of ourselves we think is more lovable, more valuable, more powerful. This is not fashion. This is idolatry. The enemy knows he doesn't need to steal your soul if he can sell you a false one. He doesn't have to chain your feet if he can blind your eyes. The illusion of luxury is not in what it costs, it's in what it convinces you to chase. You stop believing you are what you wear, what you drive, where you live. But when identity is purchased, it can also be repossessed. The danger isn't in owning nice things, it's in being owned by them. There's a silent slavery in the pursuit of appearances. It never stops. No matter what you buy, there's always a new release, a more exclusive item, a higher tier. The hunger grows even as the closet fills. That's how the illusion works. It never satisfies, it only stimulates. It keeps you reaching, spending, comparing, doubting. It promises you'll feel like you matter, but delivers only fleeting approval and long-term insecurity. And it's not just about clothes or cars, it's a system, a mindset, a culture that teaches people to measure worth by wealth and dignity by digits. From childhood, the messaging is clear. To be admired, you must impress. To be accepted, you must ascend. So people begin buying their way into circles, building their image like a fortress, hoping it will protect them from judgment, rejection, or irrelevance. But behind all the glitter, there is exhaustion. Behind the smiles, there is anxiety. Behind the curated lives, there is fear. Fear of not being enough without the costume, without the role, without the luxury. That's the cruelty of the illusion. It makes you believe you are only as valuable as what you display. This isn't just materialism, it's manipulation. A war is being fought, not in the marketplace, but in the mind. And it's not between rich and poor, but between truth and image. True confidence cannot be bought. True peace cannot be worn. True identity cannot be branded. The devil wants a generation that knows how to accessorize their body, but has forgotten how to guard their soul. He wants hearts so distracted by sparkle that they never notice the emptiness underneath. And when this obsession with luxury becomes normalized, it spreads like a virus. Entire cultures begin to elevate image over integrity. Relationships are formed not on character, but on clout. Decisions are made not by wisdom, but by status. People no longer ask, is it right? But will it look good? And when appearance becomes God, truth becomes irrelevant. There is nothing wrong with success, nothing evil about wealth, but the illusion of luxury tells a different story. It tells you that without it, you are invisible, that unless you impress, you are insignificant. It twists the gift of provision into the curse of comparison, It takes what was meant to bless and turns it into a burden. The goal isn't to hate nice things, it's to refuse to be ruled by them. It's to recognize when style becomes shackles, when taste becomes temptation, when comfort becomes compromise. Because at the end of the day, no matter how shiny, no matter how rare, no matter how expensive, a crown bought in insecurity will never bring peace to the soul. Break the illusion. Step off the stage. You are not your outfit. You are not your paycheck. You are not your possessions. The value of a person has never been determined by the price of their clothing, but by the condition of their heart, and no brand can compete with that. Distraction is the most sophisticated weapon of modern darkness. Not destruction, distraction, not chaos, comfort. Because when people are entertained, they stop paying attention. When they are amused, they stop being alert. The soul does not die in one sudden blow. It fades through 1,000 shallow distractions until there's nothing left but a hollowed-out existence masked by noise and motion. The enemy doesn't need to strike with fear if he can lull with comfort. He doesn't need to shout lies if he can drown out truth with endless noise. And so a silent strategy unfolds, one that doesn't demand rebellion, just compliance. One that doesn't seduce with sin, but numbs with screens. It begins with convenience. A scroll to pass the time, a video to unwind, a notification, a playlist, a binge-worthy show. One moment becomes 2, 2 hours become 5, and before long, entire days vanish into digital smoke. Eyes are open, but minds are elsewhere. Surrounded by connection, but plagued by isolation. The screen lights up, but the soul dims down. These are not just tools. They are traps. They promise escape, but deliver emptiness. They offer stimulation, but rob you of stillness. What was once a source of information has become a fountain of obsession. It's not about technology. It's about the slow erosion of depth, silence, and intention. People no longer sit in stillness because stillness now feels like suffocation. Silence has become unbearable. Why? Because in silence, the truth speaks, and the enemy knows that if you ever truly heard it, you'd awaken. So instead, he floods the senses. Entertainment becomes a drug, not because it's inherently evil, but because it has become essential. It has become the go-to when life feels heavy, confusing, or real. And rather than dealing with those moments, people numb them, mute them, filter them, cover them in pixels and pretend that pain doesn't exist. But the pain doesn't go away. It only waits. The lie is subtle. It's just a show. It's just a game. It's just a social media. But it's not just that. It's your attention. And where your attention goes, your life follows. The devil isn't trying to ruin your life in one dramatic moment. He's trying to waste it one click at a time. One compromise, one missed prayer, one forgotten dream, until eventually your purpose is buried beneath your playlist. There's a reason focus is so difficult in this age. It's under attack. Deep thought has become rare. Reflection, almost extinct. We scroll past meaning, we swipe past conviction. We are overstimulated and undernourished. The soul isn't meant to be saturated with noise. It's meant to listen, to discern, to connect beyond the surface. But that kind of living requires presence, and presence requires discipline. And discipline has become a foreign language in a world of instant gratification. This is the new battlefield. Not streets filled with fire, but minds filled with fog. Distraction does not come to ruin you in an instant. It comes to delay you forever. Purpose doesn't die when you fail. It dies when you forget. Dreams don't end when obstacles appear. They end when the desire to chase them gets numbed out of existence. There is no need for the enemy to attack your calling directly if he can simply convince you to spend your energy elsewhere. Entertainment has become a counterfeit comfort, replacing the presence of peace with the illusion of escape. And when a generation spends more time escaping than engaging, truth becomes irrelevant. Conviction fades. Sensitivity to good and evil is dulled. People don't even know they're losing the war because they think they're just relaxing. But this isn't rest. This is spiritual sedation. It's time to wake up, to look up, to lift eyes off the glow of screens and fix them on things that endure. True rest is not found in endless consumption, but in intentional stillness, in meaningful connection, in undistracted pursuit of what is real, what is lasting, what actually heals. Entertainment isn't evil, but it can become an altar. And when you sacrifice your time, energy, and soul at its feet, you're not just wasting time, you're giving away destiny. Don't buy the lie that distraction is harmless. It's the most dangerous comfort the devil offers, because it asks nothing of you, except everything you were created to become. There are poisons sold not in vials, but in promises. They do not come with skulls or warnings, but with glittering labels and seductive voices. They tell you, you deserve this. They whisper, it just once won't hurt. They smile and say, this is how you take the edge off. This is how you stay sane. And so the poison is swallowed, first with curiosity, then with desire, then with dependence. Addiction doesn't begin as a chain, it begins as a choice. It begins with something small, something manageable, something that feels in your control. And that's the trap. It always feels like control in the beginning, until one day you reach for it out of habit, then need, then survival. What you once chose has now chosen you. What once answered your craving now owns your will. This is the poison we ingest. Pleasure that consumes, whether it's a substance, a screen, a scroll, or a sensation. The mechanism doesn't matter. The pattern is the same. A shortcut to comfort, a fast track to numbness. A synthetic peace that promises relief but delivers decay. And the worst part? It often works at first. The high is real. The escape is convincing. The rush is exhilarating. But behind it all, something sacred is being stolen. Because these things don't just affect the body, they erode the soul. They shrink the mind. They suffocate clarity. They twist the heart's ability to desire what is good, replacing it with a hunger for what kills. People stop seeking healing and start craving anesthesia. Pain isn't dealt with, it's drowned. Conviction isn't confronted, it's silenced. Truth isn't wrestled with, it's buried under dopamine. And the enemy applauds, not because of the thing itself, but because of what it's doing to you. The devil doesn't care if it's legal, if it's popular, if it's normalized. He only cares if it steals your authority. And when addiction sets in, when the habit becomes a master, the authority of your voice, your focus, your purpose is compromised. The enemy doesn't always need a scandal. Sometimes all he needs is quiet self-destruction. hidden behind a smile, masked by a functioning life, slowly hollowing out the core of who you are. It's deeper than drugs or alcohol. It's deeper than pornography or compulsive consumption. It's anything that you can't go without. Anything that replaces prayer, numbs conviction, or hijacks your emotions. It's not about guilt. It's about awareness. Because if you don't know you're being poisoned, you'll keep drinking. If you don't recognize the chains, you'll wear them like jewelry. The culture has learned to market addiction as empowerment. A do what makes you happy. A follow your cravings. A live your truth. But happiness without boundaries is a recipe for bondage. Cravings without discipline become cages. And living your truth while ignoring the truth is how people end up lost. The poison is in the mindset as much as the substance. It tells you that what you do doesn't matter, that how you cope is nobody's business, that if it helps you survive, it's good enough. It's good enough. But survival isn't the goal. Freedom is. You were never meant to live in secret struggle. You were not designed for temporary fixes. You were not created for dependency on what damages you. There is no shame in the fight, but there is tragedy in surrendering to chains that look like comfort. And there is danger in calling something a pleasure when it's really slow destruction. The question isn't just, is it wrong? The question is it robbing me? Is it robbing time? Clarity, joy, focus. Is it making me smaller than I was created to be? Because even if it feels good now, it's not worth the slow erosion of your future. Freedom isn't found in indulgence. It's found in the strength to say no, the wisdom to walk away, the courage to admit, this is not healing me. This is hurting me. This is hurting me. That's not weakness. That's warfare. And that's how chains begin to break. The enemy wants you numb because numb people don't rise. Numb people don't build. Numb people don't confront. But you weren't made to be numb. You were made to be alive, clear, awake, free. It's time to spit out the poison. It's time to break the cycle. It's time to stop buying the lie that pleasure is peace. Because true peace doesn't come in a bottle or a browser. It comes when the soul is whole and no longer dependent on anything that kills it. There was a time when people looked upward for meaning, toward heaven, toward something greater than themselves. But now the gaze has turned inward. The soul has been taught to worship the mirror. Identity has been hijacked by ego, purpose redefined by performance. And the loudest gospel preached today is this: you are your own God. It sounds empowering. It feels liberating, but it's a trap. The culture of self is not about strength. It's about subtle destruction. It teaches people that truth is personal, morality is flexible, and authority is offensive. It tells them to build kingdoms around their desires, to follow every feeling, to silence any voice that disagrees. But when the self becomes sacred, there is no room left for truth. And when everyone is right, no one is safe. The enemy doesn't need to be worshipped directly. He only needs to convince people to worship themselves, to trade humility for pride, conviction for self-expression, discipline for indulgence. And slowly the soul detaches from reality. Right and wrong become outdated terms. Sin becomes a myth. And personal comfort becomes the highest virtue. The lie isn't new. It began in the garden. You can be like God. That was the promise, not to be free, but to be in charge, to replace the creator, to define the rules. That same whisper echoes in today's culture. Do what you want. Be your own truth. Be your own truth. Trust your heart. Define yourself. But what if the heart is broken? What if the feelings lie? What if the self cannot carry the weight of its own worship? Because when people build altars to themselves, they inevitably collapse under the weight of their own desires. The human soul was not meant to sit on the throne. It was meant to bow to truth, to follow wisdom, to seek what is higher. But self-worship blinds us. It numbs us. It convinces us that we are whole without healing, enlightened without learning, powerful without responsibility. And yet, behind all this self-exaltation, there's a quiet crisis. The rise of anxiety, the explosion of depression, the epidemic of confusion and chaos. If the self is so powerful, why is it so restless? If personal truth is enough, why is there still such desperation for meaning? Why does everything still feel so hollow, even when everything revolves around us? Because this culture of self promises fulfillment, but delivers fragmentation. People are not thriving. They are performing. Carefully crafting identities, endlessly curating images, fighting for attention, and calling it self-love. But love without truth is just vanity in disguise, and a generation obsessed with being seen has forgotten how to be known. You cannot be free when you're always acting. You cannot be whole when you're always pretending. Even spirituality has been repackaged. Now it's about energy, vibes, manifestation. God becomes a vague force to be used, not a holy presence to be worshipped. Prayer is replaced with affirmations. Conviction is dismissed as negativity. And faith becomes a personalized tool to fuel the ego, not to humble it. The soul becomes a consumer, even of the sacred. This is the devil's masterpiece, a culture so obsessed with self that it becomes allergic to surrender, because surrender is offensive to the self. Obedience feels like oppression. Submission feels like weakness, but it's not weakness, it's wisdom, it's not slavery, it's freedom, because true freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from being who you were created to be. And you cannot discover that while worshipping a broken mirror. The culture of self is seductive because it offers control. But the price of control is always chaos. When every person becomes their own authority, community crumbles. When every truth is relative, trust dissolves. And when identity is based only on feelings, it shifts like sand, leaving people with nothing solid to stand on when the storms come. There is a better way. You are not the center of the universe, and that's a good thing, because the pressure to define your own truth, carry your own meaning, and sustain your own strength will eventually crush you. You were never meant to be worshipped. You were meant to be transformed, and transformation only happens when the self gets off the throne and truth takes its rightful place. This is not the death of self, it's the rescue of it. Because the self is not evil, it's just not ultimate. The soul finds peace not in exalting itself, but in aligning with something eternal. When we surrender the illusion of control, we discover the beauty of order. When we release the obsession with self-definition, we find the strength of purpose. When we stop buying the lies of self-idolatry, we start walking in the truth that never changes. Now that the veil is lifted, the choice is clear. The illusions have been named, the lies exposed, the idols revealed. The question is no longer, what is the problem? It is, what will you do about it? Because knowing is not enough. Seeing is not enough. Seeing is not enough. Even feeling the weight of it is not enough. Change begins with decision, and decision demands action. This is a war, but not with weapons. Not with crowds or chaos. This is a war for the soul. A war waged silently in the daily choices of what you buy, what you value, what you chase, what you tolerate. A war that determines whether your life will be a reflection of truth or a mirror of the culture's most destructive lies. You cannot live free by accident. Freedom is always intentional. It is intentional. It takes clarity. It takes courage. It takes an honest look in the mirror and the conviction to say, I will no longer be a slave to things that look good but rot the soul. It means refusing to let culture define what success means, what happiness is, what worth looks like. It means no longer feeding systems that thrive on your insecurity and profit off your pain. You were created for more than this, more than endless scrolling, more than numbing addictions, more than luxury that chains you and a self-image that exhausts you. You were not made to serve things. You were not made to blend into a world obsessed with vanity and empty pleasure. You were made to stand out, to live awake, to walk with authority, to choose truth even when it costs you comfort. The world doesn't need more followers of trends. It needs people bold enough to break the cycle. People who aren't afraid to be different, to say no, to walk away, to live for something eternal while everyone else is chasing the next fix. That kind of life won't always be applauded, but it will always be powerful. Because when the world sees someone who is unbought, unshaken and unashamed, something shifts. But that shift starts with one person. You. So what does it look like? It looks like deleting what's destroying your focus, canceling what's polluting your peace. It looks like asking hard questions. Is this helping me become who I'm meant to be? Or is it keeping me numb? It means doing the hard work of confronting your habits, not out of shame, but out of hunger for freedom. It's turning down the volume of distraction and turning up the voice of conviction. It's not about perfection, it's about direction, about being willing to repent, to realign, to reclaim the life you were meant to live. Because freedom is still possible, even if you've fallen, even if you've bowed to the culture 1,000 times, even if your habits have hollowed you out. It's not too late, but the clock is ticking, and every compromise you keep is a piece of your purpose you're trading away. There is still time to choose better, to live wiser, to go deeper, but that decision has to come from within. No one can make it for you. No one else can draw the line. You must decide that peace matters more than pleasure, That purpose matters more than popularity. That truth matters more than trends. You were never meant to buy your identity. You were meant to walk in it. So rise up, break the silence, tear down the idols, unplug from the noise, starve the distractions, and feed your spirit with what is true, what is lasting, what cannot be bought and will never be sold. The culture will try to pull you back in. It will mock your resolve. It will tempt your flesh. But stand your ground, because your soul is not for sale. You've seen the 5 things that are not just useless, they are dangerous, not just expensive, they are deceptive. These are not random mistakes. They are designed to keep you asleep, sedated, and distracted from your calling. But now you know. And once you see clearly, you cannot go back to blindness. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Start now. Choose the narrow path, the high road, the one that costs more up front but pays back in peace, purpose, and power. You don't need another trend. You need truth. You don't need another product. You need presence. You don't need to impress the world. You need to impact it. So take the first step. Refuse the poison. Break the illusion. Reject the idols. Wake up and live free.